a full house today, which is super exciting. As people are coming in, as you're getting food, please come over on this side. We're going to set up a few more chairs, which is an awesome problem to have. We just need the food away from the tech, just because the VR headsets are out. So my name is Dr. Lynette Mawhinney, and I am so happy to see you all here today. Thank you for coming to the showcase. So just to give you some background, and hold on one second. Okay. All right, so one of my responsibilities here at the School of Arts and Sciences is to head up the initiative of the HIIVE Lab. And so just to give you some background, the HIIVE Lab sits in 110 Warren on the first floor. And, oh, Nicoletta, can we cut the music real quick? Thanks. All right, so as I was saying, we sit 110 Warren on the first floor. And over there we have a fleet of 27 virtual reality headsets that faculty are using with students in the classroom. We also have some headsets that are actually deployed to some labs. And our goal today is twofold. First is to let you know a little bit about what HIIVE is doing. And second is to really showcase what the faculty have been doing in the classes. And then we're going to have a student panel to give the warts and all perspective of how they like immersive technology in their classrooms or not. We will also later on have some hands-on experiences. So after you hear what the faculty have been using, there's a table for each of the apps that people have talked about. So you can actually go ahead, put on a headset. We have people there who will be assisting, and you'll get to experience this a little bit. So we want this to be very interactive. All right, so before we start, I am missing my notes, but hey, we keep on going. It's okay. So I want to tell you a little bit about what the HIIVE Lab is. So there's the first thing. So we really look at using immersive technology. Now, first off, you might be sitting there being like, what the heck is immersive technology? That's okay, because at the end of this whole showcase, you'll get to know what it is. But immersive technology consists of things like virtual reality, which people call VR, or augmented reality, which is called AR, which you'll hear a little bit about augmented reality today, or there's mixed reality, which is where you actually combine some technologies mixed in with the real world. All right, and at the HIIVE Lab specifically, and where we're located, we do three things. We are looking to experiment, not only in the classroom, which we're going to focus on today, but also thinking about this from a staff perspective. There are some staff members here, so we're also trying to work and thinking about how can virtual reality be connected with using HR, right, and human resources, or how can you think about your job a little bit differently. So we're here to experiment, then finally integrate it into the way it's doing, and then extend. We being our whole team, really think about this as our dean, Jackie Mattis, talks about, like the dandelions. Like now we have tech everywhere, right? Like we pull it, it keeps coming back. We want that. We want people to think about things differently because we're in a different kind of world. We have two sets of people in the HIIVE Lab. We have the back of the house, so that's what you're seeing right here. We have Dr. Jackie Mattis, who's the Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences. She is our money getter. She's been working with donors who have been backing this initiative to help bring this to students, faculty, and staff. You have me, who is heading up the initiative. You have Abir. She helps us with the securities, because as you can think about with all the technology we're using, we need some extra securities with that, with going through the technology. We have Morella, who helps us support with thinking about the finances and how they're used. And we have Nicoletta, who's over here, who does the admin support. She's amazing. So that's the back of the house. And then we have the front of the house. So we have Moksh and Siley, who they are the two graduate student managers of the lab. So if you ever interface with the lab, you will get in contact with them first. They are actually in their grad class right now, but they will be here in a half an hour, and you'll get to see them. They'll be here working with us. And then we have Jaden, who's over here getting the tech ready. And we have Zahid, who's in the back there. There are undergraduate students who also are in there and help specifically when there's a class happening in the lab. So with that, we're going to start with talking about the faculty. And we're first going to call up Dr. Anthony Urania. He's an assistant professor of sociology in the sociology and anthropology department. And he used immersive technology in his sociology of video games course, which, hello, is that not like the coolest course ever? And it examines long-standing social issues such as violence and addiction, while also exploring current research highlighting the positive potential of interactive digital media. Apart from using game-based learning to teach contemporary social theory and research methodologies, the course showcased how games in and of themselves are instructive cultural artifacts. So welcome, Dr. Urania.
Hello. Okay, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of what I'm sure is a very busy schedule to come see us, these fun faculty members who have decided to do this daring thing to integrate a brand new technology into already complicated classrooms. But for me, it was actually such a joy to introduce something that I've been engaging with quite some time out of sheer recreation and fun. And so today, I'd like to talk about how I integrated VR tech into my course. I'm not sure if these are, oh, there we go, perfect, great. So, as Lynette mentioned, I'm a sociologist here at Sciences-Newark. I teach classes on the social determinants of health, but then also this course, sociology of video games. I consider myself a sociologist of health, risk, and technology. And in this particular course, I make the case that while video games, yes, are something that we play for fun, if we look at them critically through a sociological lens, there's a whole lot we can learn about how the world functions in ways that are useful for our potential careers. I know many of you want to go into nursing, medicine, STEM, tech, all of that. Video games are an amalgam of these things. So today I'd like to do just a brief mini demonstration / lecture of how I went ahead and incorporated this tech. Cool. So the main case and the core theory of this course is that examining video games as cultural artifacts unlocks an accessible and engaging way for students to understand how social theory and research methods are used to resolve contemporary social issues. So in sociology, we talk a lot about social networks. Many of you already know what a social network is just by being engaged with something like Instagram, LinkedIn, all of these things. But social networks, actually sitting down and observing how it is that we are connected to one another, can help us get insight into pressing social problems. So think, for example, educational deficits. Why is it that in certain communities, there might be lower levels of educational achievement compared to others? We can look at how folks are connected to one another to see how it is that somebody learns about college and financial aid and potential careers that can stem from majoring in a STEM-related field, right? And so the way that we do that is by looking at interpersonal connections. But then Bruno Latour, he talks about how we should also consider non-human actors, such as technology, such as the microphone that I'm using right now. The way that you are learning from me in this conversation is facilitated by this node in the network known as the microphone. I make the case that video games and video game technology, like VR, also serves as a crucial function and a crucial actor within instructive social networks. But where do social networks exist? They need a place and a space. Many of you might have heard of this term called the third place. In our society, we have the first place, where we start our lives at home, the second place where we go to work or school, but then where's the third place, where we connect for fun? There's low stakes, so things like cafes, arcades. A lot of these are quickly vanishing in our society, but they're not all gone. Because I make the case that video games actually serve as a hybrid technology. Within a social network, they can be actors, as I mentioned before. They can also constitute the social network itself. Think about connected online video games that connect folks near and far using the internet. But then also they serve as a third place where people go to connect. And one way we can see that is in this technology, which I hope you get an opportunity to try today, called Noun Town, which is a very fun game that is quite literally designed to teach you a language in the way that it's done naturally in society. Think about a place like Newark. What are the sort of languages you might hear on the street? Obviously English, but what else? Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, exactly. So there are a ton of different languages. How could you learn that language? Maybe you grew up with it at home, or you come to Rutgers-Newark, you take a language instruction class, or you download something called Duolingo, a game on your phone. Nountown is designed to sort of emulate what it's like to enter a virtual world and be in another place where you can talk to people, interact with something. I can point at a car and be like, what's that in Spanish? Carro. What's that in Japanese? Kuruma. What is that in French? Voiture. So there's different ways that you can learn, and it's best seen through action, so go ahead and try that out later on. But it's almost like magic, the way that you can play through it. Here's a screenshot of some of my students learning through that technology. And on the left-hand side, I want to make sure that we make time for the rest of our speakers today, but I sort of outlined how it was that I integrated the technology into the course room. So we talked about a very popular theory in sociology, Mark Granovetter's theory of weak ties, the notion that acquaintances and the people and things that we might not have the deepest connections to can also offer the greatest opportunities for new knowledge and opportunities. And so I asked the students to go into that virtual world, learn a language, and then create your own social networks in that classroom with peers that you might have just met last week because we just started taking this class, and teach each other that new language. So today, when you go ahead and try that out, please learn a new language and then find somebody here and teach them a word or two. So that is it for me, I believe. There we go, yes. If you'd like to find my LinkedIn, it's right there, but if you have any questions, happy to answer.
Excellent. All right, next we have Dr. Zhangfeng Xian. He is an associate professor of bilingual education in the Department of Education. And he used, in his course, Introduction to Bilingual Education course, students engaged in the Walk in My Shoes virtual reality experience using an app called Immersive to navigate everyday situations in a less familiar language, deepening their empathy for multilingual learners and connecting course concepts to lived experiences. Please help me welcome Dr. Tian.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming. So I really like what Anthony just talked about. So now I'm going to introduce you to another language learning app called Immersive and how I integrated it strategically in my course, Introduction to Bilingual Education. Okay, technology is working with me. It's a good friend. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly talk about what my course was about and how I use it in my course. So my course is Introduction to Bilingual Education. So it's offered as an undergrad course, teacher training course, as part of the ESL Bilingual Education program. So basically the course is to train future teachers to become, train future teachers to understand bilingual education, equity, and support multilingual learners effectively when they become teachers in urban public schools. So basically, Immerse Me is another language learning app. It has more than 10 languages available right now. So you can see there are like German, Spanish, French, English, Japanese, Mandarin, Italian, Greek, Indonesian, and etc. So it provides you with some real life scenarios. For example, you can practice how to order food, order a coffee, go to bakery shop, how to you buy a piece of bread, trying using a language that you don't know yet, right? And it also has different proficiency levels. There's a beginner, intermediate, and more advanced level. So basically, it's a language learning app that puts you into immersive real-life scenarios. So in my course, because my course is about train future teachers to become better bilingual teachers, right? So my main goal is I want them to understand how multilingual learners they feel every day in a language that they are not familiar with in this country, right? Like some of them are newcomers, right? Some of them are who are still developing proficiency in English, right? So I want them to pick a language that they don't know yet or they are not familiar yet, and try that out, right? And go through the different scenarios. I asked them to pick at least 3 real-life scenarios. So try to order something, right? In a coffee shop, in bakery shop, right? And noting your emotions You may experience frustrations and how you navigate a language that you don't know yet, right? Like how you draw upon all the linguistic, bodily, semiotic resources that you have to engage in sense making, right? And what challenges you may encounter, what emotions you may go through. So put yourself into the shoes of those multilingual learners who experience this every day in their schools and also beyond the school environment, in the society also. So, and then after they finish that language learning experience, I also asked them to complete a reflection. So pretty much I want them to make the experience, connecting the experience to the course concept theories that we've been discussing in the course, like bilingual theory, second language acquisition. We also talk about translanguaging theories, etc. And also think about what are the implications for your future teaching experiences from this Immersive experience. So this is the interface when you go into this app, right? I highly encourage you to try it out. So we have a table for you to try this Immersive, right? So you can see there are multiple languages available, right? When you go into this app, and you can just choose one language that you are interested or that you want to challenge yourself, right? Definitely, I don't recommend English. I recommend other different languages. And so I pick another. So for example, this is a real life scenario. Order a coffee, right? So this is Mandarin. And you can see, you can sort of like practice pretty much what would you like to order, right? Like this sort of, you are literally interacting with a real person trying to order a coffee, right? And then you're gonna practice. Okay, 你好，我想要一杯拿铁带走. I'd love to order a latte to go, right? So, and you to sort of like they will give you sort of how do you say it in Mandarin, how do you pronounce it, and you try to sort of like follow sort of like sometimes like this is where I ask my students to note your emotions. Want you to follow, right? Like, you may mess up the tones, right? Like, when you try to practice Mandarin, you may not follow exactly, what you are hearing, right? Like and you may make mistakes, right? And what strategies you may draw upon to continue to move forward with the lesson, right? Because sometimes they may feel stuck also, right? I'm not going anywhere, right? And you just continue to repeat the same sentences. And this is exactly what multilingual learners in our classrooms, they have to go through, right? Like in a language that they are not familiar with yet. So why this mattered in my course? I think I pretty much explained this, right? Many students in my class, they will become teachers of multilingual students, right? I think it is one thing to read about language learning, but it is really another thing to feel frustration, hesitation, and vulnerability firsthand, right? And through this Immersive app, this VR technology, it really gives students the firsthand experience to really experience how multilingual learners feel. So my goal definitely is to build empathy, make concepts more concrete, connect core theory to embodied experience, and help them to think differently about support, patience, and inclusion, right? After they go through everything, now they understand, right? Wait time is important in a class, right? You really need to give them enough time to process, right? When they are silent, it doesn't mean they are not thinking about anything, right? They just need more time to think deeply and to sort of think about the word, right? And so a lot of these things, I think VR really made the emotional and human side of learning, language learning, visible. And here are some pictures from my class, right? You can see students, they are sort of like learning a different language, and they sort of having discussion also, right? They talk about their emotions, the strategies they used in learning different languages, and and I also ask them to jot down some reflections in real time. Yeah, I also want to share some student reflections from my class, right? This is like how they felt after experiencing this Immersive experience, right? So definitely students, they felt the emotional weight of language learning, right? I feel like I didn't belong there in what I was doing, like it wasn't for me. What surprised me most was how physically and emotionally exhausting the task became. right? They really understand learning a second language wasn't just about right like the learning language. It's all embodied this experience, social, emotional, and physical experience also. And they also talk about how language shapes confidence and identity. So for example, it was surprising how quickly someone like me, who usually sees herself as talkative and confident, could retreat into a shell simply because I couldn't communicate well. They also talk about different strategies to navigate an unfamiliar language, right? So I repeated each phrase multiple times, guessed based on context clues and visuals, and tried to recall phonetic patterns. Without realizing it, I was translanguaging, drawing from all my full language repertoire to make sense of new words. And last but not least, they began to rethink teaching when they work with multilingual learners. The experience allowed me to see what my students experience when learning English for the first time. As an educator, I now see the importance of creating emotionally safe, linguistically inclusive classrooms that validate students' native languages as tools for meaning making, not obstacles to overcome. Right? As we know, US schools, especially public schools, we still have this English-only policy, right? So usually students, they are not allowed to explicitly bring their home languages, their home cultures into the classroom, right? So by doing this experience, they now, when you navigate a language that you're not familiar with, definitely you try to draw upon something that you already know to navigate something you don't know yet. And these are just my takeaways, right? So I think VR can not just promote engagement, but also deepen empathy. And structured reflection, I think, is what makes this experience really meaningful. And also this kind of assignment helps future educators connect technology, theory, and practice. So what I want to say is, if we want teachers to support multilingual learners well, we need to help them experience what language vulnerability feels like. VR was not the goal. More humane, inclusive teaching was the goal. So, thank you all for your listening.
All right, next up we have a dynamic duo. They are faculty members who work together on a project, so I'm going to introduce them both. We have Alexander Chang, who is an associate professor of practice within the Department of Arts, Culture, and Media. And we also have Kiri Rosen, who's an artist and faculty member also in what we call ACM, and he's the founding director of the Form Design Studio and the Form Design Lab, which sits here in Express Newark. Their project focused on the course, which was called Problems in Graphic Designs, Advanced Modeling. And they created the logo and the website structural design system for the Price Institute's Healing Garden, which is not too far from here. The branding system will be applied to the Healing Garden's informational website and to an interactive augmented reality and virtual reality map of a garden space. So please welcome Alex and Kiri.
So I have to figure out the clicker. So the project was AR for curating in the Healing Garden. So it was with the eco art class and also the graphic design course that Kiri taught. And it was amazing to be able to collaborate together. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to work with this class. And so with the Healing Garden, what I wanted to be able to do with my class is be able to think about how do you curate an exhibition in which site is very important, the history of site is important, and also we're collaborating with an eco-artist like Nuna Yawar, who works here at ACM, as well as, you might know, he's like an amazing muralist. He's done things all over campus as well as Newark. So how do we think about telling stories? Like curating is really telling stories. And I like to tell my students that, learning different skills is really essential when you're trying to tell stories, because you can think of different ways to use that. So I teach them about Web3, I teach them about creating a course for AI and small scale models, but also using AR as a possibility. But not really thinking like, oh, I'm going to use it all the time. but when are you selectively going to use the technology that you need to tell those stories? And the Healing Garden was a site and a space for an exhibition that we wanted to be able to use AR because we felt that it would bring another level to the storytelling. And we were so grateful to be able to use the technologies and collaborate with Carrie's class, because my class is really about curation. So what we did was we began thinking about the Healing Garden and what it was and what it did. It brings people together, it's a demonstration garden, we have graduate students working there, thinking about the history of the space, the land, and of course the long history of the land from the glacial creation through Lenape stewardship, through also the history of factories and pollution, environmental toxicity that has happened in the soil. And so they're doing soil testing here. So thinking about that long history, how do we tell that in a site, right? And can you put a little sign up? Most exhibitions have a sign, and there's 75 words that you're allowed to really put in there for general public to actually be accessible through an exhibition. But you're in a garden. How are you going to do that? You're going to put signs everywhere? And so this is, again, it's a space of community as well, and community stories. And there are workshops here telling about healing medicinal herbs. So we have all these herbs too. How do we tell about that? Sorry, so bad at the clicker. Go back, go back. Ah, sorry. Done. All right, and there's giving a workshop on drawing as well. So also about the eco-art activities and projects that are in the garden. There are activities and actual projects embedded in the garden. How do we tell about that as well? So this was the design of the garden that was created with the community coming together, the campus, as well as the neighborhood, as well as gardeners that came together to talk about it. We're so happy that Rutgers is renovating the garden this year, so the plans are, I think they're almost past, so they're going to start actually renovating the garden. And so there's kind of this change that's happening, and this opportunity to really think about the space and what is there, what happens there in terms of an exhibition as the story of the garden. And here is just a map of the horticulturalist from Branchbrook Park is working with us on native plantings. So how do we talk about all of these things? There's so much going on. And here's Leica again. And I wanted to show you just, this piece that you might have seen in the airport. But he's already using the internet to tell stories, because you can actually go online and search the different stories that are attached to the imagery. But he's also used AR on different murals as well before. So he's conscious of using AR. And what we wanted to be able to do with him is create these eco-art projects that are green design projects. So, such as because heat island mitigation is something that is very real here in Newark. So we wanted to do a demonstration of that in the garden with Leica, and be able to also tell stories through design. And Kiri's actually working on that project. And these other folks, including Natalie Seagriff, architect and urban agriculture cooperative. An animation, I don't know if, should we show that at the end or something, or are we able to play this? Oh, we can play it? Okay, great. So this is just an animation of the sails that we're thinking about in terms of the garden. And so we have all these interesting assets, right, to think about for an exhibition, say you want to show. Can I move on to the next slide? All right, cool. Another example of the sails that he wants to bring together to as community comes together in this central meeting space for events. Can you go on a little bit more? So we have really interesting assets. This is another example. All right. Okay, well, we'll just get on. Oh, okay, that's just another image. We have different assets going on. Also, he's creating an eco-art project with Gary and Alexandra as well, on the new fence that's going to be replacing the fence that we have currently for the Healing Garden, and it's going to be somewhat looking like this, but it's also going to tell stories of the Healing Garden and like the people that use it, seeds and plants that are there. And so there are all these things that we wanted to do on the site. And so what we did was the class really learned about his work very closely. So they even attended his classes. They attended the the workshops that happened in the garden to learn about the community that gathered there. They learned about different gardens around Newark. They're visiting the Rabbit Hole Farm there. And they came together to think about what would the narrative flow be if we were to create a website. Because we have to think very specifically, like we're going to create an online segment, but also have QR codes that would enable an AR possibility within the garden. So they had to think differently than they normally would for an exhibition. So they were thinking about narrative flows. They had to share assets with Gary's class, so we created folders to share all different assets, the animation sales, workshop images. We had all these different assets that were created. Each of the folders kind of went down that information architecture that you had seen that we created, so then Gary's class could look at that when they were implementing and thinking about the web design and what could potentially be the AR component. Learn how to write very succinctly for the web and for AR as well. Can I play this? Or? All right, great. They also did interviews, so they could be videos of Leica talking about
I think
his
at this
work.
moment it's been very beautiful to listen because there's a lot of
online.
work that's already happening at the garden.
And they had to find edit spots that would be shorter
And so I'm
for the AR.
like grateful to be able to like
process.
learn from others and learn from the plants that have been brought to the space, and so see them as like this subject.
Oh, okay, great. They were able to create information about the plants. So if you went to a plant bed, there would be information about each of the beds. They were also able to talk about the history of the garden. So really talking about the space, the larger context of the space, the larger context of the space as a community garden within Newark, Leica's work, as well as these smaller things were enabled, where normally you wouldn't have all this information there at the garden. And through that also, they helped out the Price Institute a lot because they created a wonderful narrative that we're going to be able to have when people visit. And so here's them thinking about how image and text can be created that's more succinct, and also incorporating, like Trust was able to give us some new maps that they had created as well about community gardens. And I would like to segue now to Kiri and his work with the class and the web and online AR component.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Alex covered a lot of what we were charged with doing in collaborating together. The real challenge was basically taking all this information that Alex students were giving us and figuring out how to translate that into visuals. So, you know, and we had a whole list of topics that were important that we include in the map and also the website that we worked on as a class. So, like, we were thinking about, like, you know, how do we be respectful to the place and the people who once lived there, and how do we open the space up to community and make it an inviting space? You know, how do we talk about what's happening there with, you know, all the different, you know, biological systems that are growing there. So basically we started with a logo design. And we had conversations with Alex's class, and they talked about, you know, like what they felt were the most important ideas that they wanted to have expressed through the logo. So this is, and what we did as a class was all the students developed their own ideas based on the information that we were given, and everybody in the class came up with a separate design. And then at the very end of the semester, we had Alex look at the different designs and her students look at the different designs and give us feedback, and we decided on a logo design that we liked, and then we also decided on the structure of the website and how that might look. So this is going to be a multi-semester project because we haven't broken ground on the site yet. So the idea of having an interactive AR/VR map is still something that we are going to be approaching and learning about, and as soon as we're able to. But the idea was that we would have, so it could be completely VR, completely immersive, but we want to have a map of the space when it's completed, and it has, there are artistic artifacts that are going to be placed around the garden, and then there's also, different kinds of plants and, different kinds of vegetation growing. So the idea is to have a map that you can have on your cell phone or on an iPad, or if you're not there on site, you could do it virtually, and you just kind of move through the space, and you can click on, different icons, and they'll tell you information about like what, and like his artistic practice, and what he is bringing to the garden, or you'll be able to talk about, let me just go through some of these pages. Okay, so I'm gonna let my students talk about this when it becomes their turn to speak, because this is something that they developed, but basically you can see that like the logo came from this part of the map right there. You see that circle right there? So, we were thinking about like the idea of the healing garden, and that being a space that kind of was set aside for to be a meditative kind of gathering space. So just in looking at the map right here, and then looking at all of these like little circles that represented the different plant life that's going to be growing there. The design team kind of focused in on that area, and came up with a whole structure. We also became interested in like wood patterns and fingerprints and ways of making you feel like you're connecting with nature even though you're doing something virtually or on a screen. The students developed this kind of fingerprint swirly line type of technique, and so here's just some examples of the way that we might approach some of the imagery on the website, and also these go-to QR activated moments that you have as you're walking through. But like I said, so here we are back at, this is the splash page for the website, and so these were some of the icons that we decided we wanted to use that will bring you on the website to this information also. But yeah, it's a project in progress, and we're excited to be working with in collaboration with researchers, and yeah, it was a very challenging assignment, a semester-long assignment, and we also, if you come over to our table, we're probably the only ones here that don't have VR headsets on our table because we don't have the VR yet. But we have a computer presentation, and you can look through it. And they also, the students did also approach some of the actual physical signage that might be placed in the garden as well. Yeah, so that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
All right. So next we have up is Dr. Darian J. Davis, who is Professor of History and Chair of Africana Studies Department. Over the years, he's used a variety of digital platforms in various classes, including digital chronologies and Google Maps. But this semester, he's using virtual reality to immerse students into urban landscapes as they study them in a classroom with an app called HIIVE VR. So please welcome Dr. Davis.
Okay. Thank you for being here. I don't have a presentation. I want you to listen to my voice. And I will look directly at you so I don't have to turn around. So if we had a choice to travel anywhere in the world, if I say that I could take you to Nairobi right now and you close your eyes, or Havana, or Rio de Janeiro. Well, actually, this is tricky because if you haven't been there, you don't know what to imagine in your mind. But what I'm trying to get at is that if you can do that, you would. And part of what I do in my class is, in this particular class, is to allow students to travel to the places that we're studying. So I'll give you some background of where this idea comes from, and I'll just read a quote, and I'll ask if anybody knows where this comes from. You never really understand a person until you consider things from their point of view, until you climb inside of their skin and walk around in it. Anybody know? This is from To Kill a Mockingbird. And it's an important quote from Atticus Finch, who talks about the power of empathy, of understanding people from inside their shoes. That can be extended to communities, trying to understand communities, and traveling is one way of us to do, for us to do that. We can't always do that, right? And so I'm not a salesperson for Meta VR, but they have created a really interesting program to allow us to travel to these places and to contemplate being in these different places around the world. And so I use JVR and another app that's developed by Meta related to the Anne Frank house, where we can take students into those spaces and walk around, if not in the shoes of the individuals in that community, to try to understand. So VR has given me another tool to help students understand and explore and enhance their knowledge and analytical skills. They experience what I call historical signposts that allow us to talk about these issues in our class. This is, if I want to use another sort of literary individual, if you know the Canterbury Tales and the stories of traveling the Canterbury Tales, you can also use this to create stories and experience virtually, literally, the city of Havana and walk around in it and then talk about your experience of Havana. I focus particularly on the aspect of African descendants, not exclusively, but we can also study African descendants in Havana, in Trinidad, in Brazil, and come back to class to talk about our experiences. You'll hear the experience of one student who's later on who's in the class, but I really do encourage you to use HIIVE VR to experience it yourself. So in the class, we go to 5 or 6 places, and we travel around to those places based on a series of lectures and readings and discussions that we have at the beginning of class. So it's not a vacation, even though one of the places is Salvador da Bahia, another one is Havana, and you do see images of beaches. And one student, I think it was Brandon, who said, "Oh, I want to be there. I don't want to be in Jersey City." And so, but normally I would say, well, no, let's get back to class. But no, we can use that to talk about what you're feeling in your body. Why do you feel this desire to be there? How does that relate to communism in Cuba at the moment, or what's happening in Cuba? And so everything is permissible because, like many of my colleagues talk about, the idea of empathy and getting in touch with your own feelings, virtual reality can help us do that. Strangely enough, right? To go out of your body to get back into your body. And so we talk a lot about understanding what we're feeling. And to be quite honest, it's, as a teacher of several decades, it's for the teacher, it's also vulnerable because we're used to, here are the answers, I can correct this for you, I can give you this back. But in fact, I had to be, and have to be, vulnerable with the students to say, particularly in this mode, I'm in beta mode. We're trying to understand how this works. We're trying to see how this is going to enhance our analytical skills. We're learning together, and I'm also guiding you. And so I don't want you to go off to the beach, but I do want you to sort of go off to the beach and then begin to analyze what's going on in a larger context. So in addition to having this experience, we also have to talk about the element of curation. I think one of my colleagues mentioned that. So she is a curator. And we want to be able to understand or have students think about, even though we're traveling through this maze, whether it is Lisbon or Paris, I mean, literally there are 400 places you can go. And so I, as a teacher, do have to choose, and I am doing work, I'm not just traveling around. You have to curate this in order to understand what our goals are. But it also is a reflection of the student's capacity to understand what's being curated. And I think that that's really an important skill in our modern age, contemporary ages, where people are giving us ideas of what they think they want us to look at. And we want to understand how these issues are created for us. These visions are created for us. So we spend a lot of time talking about the experience and who's curating it. So what I do so I have 10 debriefing questions. I'll just read you some of them to help us think about curation. So the first question is, what stood out to you in this virtual experience? So it's an element of reflection, so that it's not just experience it and then let's go on to the other thing, but there's a moment in which we ask ourselves questions. Was there a moment that surprised or unsettled you? How did your body respond? And that's actually the hardest question, because the answers often are, I was excited, or I don't know what I'm feeling. And so we talk about that in terms of what's happening in one's body. At the end of that, I won't read you all of the 10 questions, but at the end, it's the last 3 questions are, what choices did the creators make in telling this story? Right? So that helps us to understand how this is curated, and what different choices would you make if you were curating this story, given that you've traveled to Nairobi or Havana. And then the last 2 questions are, what perspectives or voices might be missing? Do you think this is an appropriate use of VR? And And so there are moments in which I have to give trigger warnings because we are studying sites of migration. We begin on a slave ship in the Atlantic. We go to Anne Frank's place, we go to Auschwitz. And so all of these have to be discussed. And partly for me, okay, I'll wrap up, but partly for me, this discussion has to be a part of our journey through VR. And that's it. I think it's still a work in progress. I do have some suggestions for Meta, but we'll leave that for later. Thank you.
All right, and next I'm going to call up Dr. Rola Bekdash. She's a faculty member in the department. Yeah, give it up! She's a faculty member in the Department of Biological Sciences, and she's used virtual reality to create immersive learning experiences in her human anatomy and physiology course. And she specifically used the app called 3D Organon. So please help me welcome Dr. Bekdash.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for HIIVE for organizing this showcase. So today what I will do, I will share the rationale for using virtual reality in my course Anatomy and Physiology 2, how I implemented it, and its impact on student learning. Now, many students can learn about the brain, heart, liver individually and memorize pathways, but they struggle with the spatial relationship between these complex biological structures. And without the spatial context, it will become really difficult to understand how they function and how different systems in the human body are conceptually interconnected. And this could overwhelm students, leading to cognitive overload. So here comes the question, is how we can move our students from memorization to immersive conceptual understanding, and how we can bridge this gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application. So here, to address these challenges, our student needs better ways to interact and visualize these complex biological structure, and also exercise multiple areas of their brain to increase retention and understanding. So here we explored the use of immersive learning tools, and one of the most promising platforms that we identified is 3D Organon, which is the leader in immersive technology for teaching human anatomy and physiology in the medical field. So our students with 3D Organon, they can rotate organs in different planes at the macro and micro levels. They can study each system layer by layer and also understand this complex spatial relationship, which is usually difficult to achieve when you are using traditional 2D static images from textbook. So basically our students are moving from passively viewing anatomy into actively exploring it. And this has clinical relevance, as many of our students are seeking health-related careers. Now, the technology by itself is not the whole story. The key question is how to integrate it into the curriculum in a meaningful way. And this is how I introduced and integrated virtual reality into my current course, Anatomy and Physiology 2, which usually enroll around 100 nursing students every spring semester. So I integrated virtual reality into existing lab modules, ensuring alignment with the course learning objectives, and also created stand-alone VR sessions. Our students who are here today, our students participated in small group rotations with timed VR activities to ensure equity in the immersive learning experiences, of course under the support of trained teaching assistant. And while our students are in the lab immersing in 3D organon, they have also access to the software on their laptop, and also they have access to it at home, which further increase understanding and retention of the material. In order to maximize also learning, the goal is not to replace the traditional teaching methods in labs with VR, but rather to enhance them in ways that are intentional and pedagogically meaningful. And that's why I developed the VR modules very carefully to align them with the course learning objectives. Assessment were also developed in order to track student progress and their understanding of human anatomy and physiology. And also each VR module at the end has reflection questions which basically prompt our students to compare their 3D learning experiences with traditional 2D representation, basically strengthening their metacognitive awareness of how they actually learn complex material. Now here is VR in action in our lab in the Boyden 134 in the biological science department. We have around 100 nursing students. We have 5 lab sections, 20 students per section, and each section was divided into 5 groups, and each group consisted of 4 students. And you can see our students working together. And if you notice from the reflection codes below, that we are not only engaged students, but also supported active exploration, collaboration, teamwork, while at the same time bridging this gap between classroom concept and applied understanding. Our students not only use the technology, but also they completed guided assessment, which enabled them really to consolidate their understanding of human anatomy and physiology. Of course, we are in the process of collecting data in order to understand and evaluate actually the long-term effect of using virtual reality with time on student learning outcomes. This initiative fits within the larger goals of SASN and the goals of the biological science department, which is to provide our students with immersive hands-on learning experiences, introducing innovative teaching methods not only to labs but also to large auditorium, also support the pre-health curriculum while reinforcing clinically relevant skills, and importantly is that this approach is designed basically to be scalable and sustainable. So this means that I will be using it in my current course for long term, and also it will be implemented, the virtual reality, into other courses in the biological science department. How? So vertical scaling, the VR modules that I developed, they are used consistently across multiple lab topics and across multiple lab sections. And each student followed the same learning sequence, progressing from viewing to guided interaction under the support of our teaching assistant, to worksheet practice where students learn with their friends and independently and ultimately reach mastery, while all these VR activities remain aligned with the course objectives, assessed for learning, and tracked to evaluate learning outcomes. Virtual reality will not only be used in my current course, Anatomy and Physiology 2, which is usually enrolling around 100 nursing students every spring semester. Also, virtual reality will be implemented in my upper level course next fall, Mammalian Physiology, which is a foundational course in the biological science department, enrolling around 165 pre-med students. And actually, we had several trials last fall with the help of HIIVE team, and the feedback from students were quite very positive. Also, the virtual reality will be integrated into part 1 of Anatomy and Physiology, again for our nursing students next fall. And this will be replicated in another upper level course for pre-med students next spring in mammalian anatomy. So as you can see, is that together the vertical and horizontal scaling will ensure that virtual reality will extend beyond one course, but it will become part of a connected learning experience across the biology curriculum, enabling students to build deeper understanding as they progress. Thank you very much for listening. At the end, I would like to thank the Dean of the School of Arts and Science in Newark, Jacqueline Mattis, for making this initiative a reality and for supporting our students. Thank you for being here for our students and supporting the biological science department. I also would like to thank her team, including Associate Dean Linat Mohini, thank you very much, and Assistant Dean Abil Ahraf, and all the HIIVE staff. I would like also to thank the department chair at Bonder, our teaching assistant today, Sumara and Amelie, for supporting our students and for being here today, and the biology staff, and finally my student for being here today. And finally, thank you, 3D Organon team and Vadex Solution. So what I will do now, I will leave you with a short video, 1 minute and a half. It will show you the functionality of this platform. Of course, what you will see is 2D, so we'll be happy to have you on our table so you can experience the platform in 3D. Thank you very much.
To our next
activities and what we're going to do. So first I'd like to invite up the student panelists, if you can kind of join me up here, sitting at the chairs. So there's going to be two things happening right now. We're going to have a conversation with the students who've been in all these classes, and they're going to give you that raw, warts and all, thoughts about how immersive technologies were used in their classrooms. While that's going on, we have the table set up with all the different things that you heard. So we have 3D Organon, which you just saw here for the anatomy. We have Immerse Me, we have JVR, the travel experience, and Downtown, and we have the AR table over there with the healing gardens. So there's a lot of folks in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask if you want to try something. You can go over to the table. There's people there to help and assist. You'll get about 10 minutes, and then we'll rotate it out for other people to do it while we're having this conversation. All right, so we have two things going on at once. All right, student panelists, thank you so much. So let's just start off. If you can all introduce yourself, give your name, what class you were in, and if you did virtual reality, what app you were using, or if you did augmented reality. Okay.
Hi, my name is Annie Del Torre. I took Introduction to Bilingual Education with Professor Tian. We did Immerse Me, as well as, I can't remember the exact app, but it was Frame.io, I believe it was.
Hi, my name is Dalal Elsharkoui. I'm in Anatomy and Physiology 2 with Dr. Bektash, and we are currently using 3D Organon.
Hi, my name is Nelia Rivas, and I am in Anatomy and Physiology 2 with Dr. Bektash, and the virtual reality software we used was 3D Organon.
Hi, my name is Brandy Pierre-Lewis. I'm in special topics, science, medicine, and technology, and points of migration, hosted by Professor Darian Davis. We primarily use JVR.
Hello, my name is Camila Zarzuela. I'm a Rutgers-Newark graphic design alumni. My class was Problems in Graphic Design under Curie Rosen, and the program we wanted to implement and use with is Vista 3D.
Hi, my name is Liam Gunning, and I'm also a Rutgers GD alumni here at Rutgers University in Newark. I was part of the team that designed the logo for the Clement Price Healing Garden under Professor Curie Rosen in Problems in Graphic Design 2. And the program that we used the most was 3D Vista.
Thank you all for that. So again, this would be a conversation. We don't have to go in order. You don't even have to answer the question if you don't want to. But we have only 2 mics, so just pass it, whoever wants it next. So the first big question is, people talk a lot about technology being a motivator. So did using technology in your class change your motivation levels or engagement in learning? Why or why not?
I'll go ahead and jump in on this one. So we're graphic design majors, Camilla and I right here, and most of the work that we do is very much on the computer. As you would know, we work with a lot of design software, but we also work off the computer and on paper. One of the major things that boosted our motivation level in the Problems of Graphic Design 2 course was definitely the day that we walked in when we were first introduced to the 3D imaging technology implemented in class. And what we did was we walked in, we had no idea. And there was this 3-dimensional camera called an Insta360 camera, and it takes 3D photos that can be used in AR and VR, and none of us in the class had ever seen one or used one. So we walked in thinking, okay, we're going to do standard design work today, but instead, Professor Rosen says, actually, we're going to unbox this camera. We're going to walk to the healing garden itself. We're going to do a site visit, and we're just going to play with the camera. We're going to play with the technology and conduct our own individual research on the topic. So we went there, we had a great time, and there was no pressure to really oh, we're not failing at doing this. We're just taking photos however we feel fit, and then we're going to go through them later and experiment with all different ways that we can interpret them, use them for our research, or just play around like a workshop. So it was great.
So I'm a nursing major, and my grades plays a really big part, as I cannot get lower 75. So I often get overwhelmed when I don't understand the material and I get unmotivated. But using the 3D Organon has almost made studying like a game for me. So it instantly makes me motivated to learn the different systems, as well as using the quiz option. It has helped me like retain so much information. When I first took my first anatomy test, I got an 80, which is not bad, but it's not also good for me, for my expectations. And this time I used the quiz setting in the 3D organon, as shown in the video. And today we had our second test, and I believe I excelled at it because of the 3D
It's funny that you say that too, because in the fall semester we did a quick pilot with 3D Organon with Dr. Bekdash's class. And as they were first doing it, I heard a student say to another, "Yo, if I had this with the last quiz, I wouldn't have failed." Yeah, so it definitely gives a different perspective with learning. So thank you for that.
So yeah, 3D Organon has increased my engagement with the material. So as a very visual learner, being able to view all of these different systems in 3D and like all rotate them, I can like see all the spatial relationships, and that just really, really has helped me a lot.
I would say that my motivation definitely increased, especially we designed a school of our dreams that would cater to multilingual learners or emergent learners. And urban education, there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of text, there's a lot of policies that you have to know. And so for me, I don't tend to have the best memory, so I get really overwhelmed and stressed out when I can't remember pages and pages of text. But doing this project allowed me to have open access to create a school without any financial worries. And so working with my teammates, we were able to throw in a lot of ideas that we felt that the education system right now lacks. And so we were able to take on and tackle a lot of challenges that we felt that marginalized students faced. And within the first day when we started, our document was pretty much filled up within the first 10 minutes. And creating the school was so much fun that I sort of felt sad that it was such a short period compared to other classes where you just sort of have to write essays and just keep it all in your head. Our ideas were able to become a reality in a way. But yeah, that was what I would say.
So awesome. All right, so when you're using the tech, was there any particular standout moment when using it? Like what happened, what were you doing? Liam kind of mentioned a moment of like, whoa, right? Did anyone else have any of those standout moments? And again, this is the warts and all. The standout moment is like, my stuff didn't work and I got real frustrated, right? So keep it real with us.
So my standout moment actually happened recently when I was studying for our second exam, which was today. So it included the urinary system, and so in the kidney the kidney cells are called nephrons, and there's a bunch of them, and the nephron is very, very complicated. So I was having trouble visualizing like all the different components of the nephron, but on 3D Organon there's like a microscopic section. So I used it, and like you can see so many different things on a microscopic level, such as alveoli, nerves, skin, so many different things. So once I saw the nephron, I saw all the different parts, like the filtration, all the tubules. I won't get into it, but seeing all that just helped me like understand everything and like just how basically urine is made, and that just really helped me for the exam.
A standout moment for me was also using the microscopic setting in the 3D organon. There's the upper GI tract and the lower GI tract, and when we use the the virtual reality, we use worksheets that basically instruct us on what to do. And my team, if I can recall, we had to locate where the pancreas was. And I was like, oh, I know this is in the lower GI tract, but I wasn't really sure of the spatial relationship it had with the other organs, such as the spleen, the stomach. Like when you use a textbook, when you see a diagram of the lower GI tract, you see the stomach and the small intestines. You don't see the gallbladder, you don't see the pancreas. So I was shocked when I found out that the pancreas was actually like behind the stomach. And I also figured out that the gallbladder was the color green. And I never knew the gallbladder was green. And I was like, whoa, this is really cool. So yeah, I would say that's my story.
My experience also happened very recently. It happened, I think, like 3 classes ago when our class traveled via VR to St. Lucia. In the humanities, we read a lot. We don't really get to have like hands-on experience as undergraduate students. And so one of the topics that we talked about during class was about forced migration in the Caribbean, how a lot of laborers had to move around the Caribbean for work opportunities, and also were able to retain their cultures in various ways and make creolized cultures. And so specifically in St. Lucia, when we traveled, I was able to see how the migration was physically on the land. It was something also that was very interesting to me about how tourism also influences travel and migration throughout the Caribbean. As you know, St. Lucia is a very popular tourist spot, and when we traveled to St. Lucia, we were able to see how on the beach we saw all these resorts that were majority occupied by white people, but when we traveled to more rural areas, we got to see that it was more black and brown people occupying these areas, which was really interesting to me because while we never really like see it that much in like our physical reality, when we got to travel via VR to St. Lucia, we were able to see it so like in your face instead of just seeing it in words or in statistics. So I think that was one of the highlights of the virtual VR sessions in my class this semester.
My experience was actually an example demonstrated by another previous Rutgers alumni named Joseph Labib. For his senior capstone, they actually developed a virtual reality exhibition because during that time it was COVID, so the odds of it being in person were more limited. And just thinking about how like an exhibition space could be sort of archived in that way, because the experience of going out in person and interacting with an exhibition yourself, it's very fleeting. Not everyone can take the opportunity to go and do it themselves. So I just thought the idea of having that kind of archival purpose for the use of virtual reality and augmented reality was very interesting to me.
So the next question is for those who use virtual reality specifically. So the one thing people say a lot about with VR is that it gives you an opportunity to make mistakes without having the real world consequences, right? So such as if you break a lab beaker, right? Like not nasty chemicals going to be in the air, right? Or if you misspeak in a situation, which we heard with like Immerse Me in downtown. So did any of you find a safety net? Did you find that VR was a safety net to make you feel more comfortable trying new things? Why or why not?
So in my lab, right, we do cat dissections, basically, and we had to label the organs of the urinary system. And my group and I could not find the bladder of the cat. So using the virtual reality, we were able to see the bladder and like where exactly it's located and stuff. So we went back to the cat dissection and we were like, okay, it must be right under all of this fat and tissue, and it was. So yeah, it's like when you know you can't find something during a lab dissection, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail the next quiz, because then you have to identify where it is and what that exact organ is. So the VR, yeah, it really did help.
So that's interesting, right? Hearing that kind of like the mixed or real world at top, like instead of being like, let's Google it or try to figure it, like let's get this headset on, actually see it, and then we can go into it, instead of maybe cutting through somewhere else and then, oops. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Any safety net?
Since the class is like very history based, we usually have to interact with a lot of artifacts, and with artifacts we have to be very mindful of preservation. So when we specifically went to the Anne Frank's memorial in the Netherlands, I found it very interesting how we were able to like interact via VR with the books, the diaries of Anne Frank, and also like her bedroom and the things that she put on her walls. and it's very like cautious when you're moving around these spaces, and you don't really want to knock everything over when you're in real life. But in VR, you had a little bit more mobility, and you were able to more like move around more freely, touch things without really like being worried about like touching something with a wet hand or something like that, because you were not physically in that place and you weren't going to ruin like years and years of history and mess it up for future generation of historians. So I think that was something that I really appreciated with the experience of VR, because you didn't have to like hold yourself back with this hesitation and this worry of ruining things around you.
Interesting point. We never heard of that. I think what we sometimes hear with the travel stuff is also there's a little financial safety, right? So think about the Anne Frank house. Since I was 10 years old, said I want to go to Anne Frank. I want to go to Amsterdam to go to Anne Frank house and eat Gouda cheese. Everyone else wants to smoke weed. I want to go to Anne Frank house and eat Gouda cheese. I've never been to Amsterdam, but when I put that VR headset on, I was able to go there without all the financial stuff and to really be in it. So it's kind of interesting. But I never thought about like, yeah, you might hurt artifacts when you're there. I don't have to do that. There's some safety, so thank you. Anyone else on safety?
I would say when learning a different language through VR, there was that feeling of not being judged by someone else hearing you with mispronunciation. There was a section where you talk to someone, do a conversation, and I feel for a lot of people who feel insecure or feel that the language that they're learning might have an inferiority complex, it could be hard for them to have a conversation with someone else because they feel that in this day and age, everything about you can be judged. So I was learning like 3 different languages, and my pronunciation, I kept getting it wrong. But because I was by myself in this virtual reality, it was easier for me to gain that confidence after trial and error. Which I feel like could benefit a lot of people, especially when it comes to advancing their linguistic systems.
Let me ask, have you, like, that experience compared to, like, Duolingo and the judgy green owl? Have you ever played with that app?
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you find being in that actually helps a little bit more versus, like, something that's a little bit more 2D?
I would say yes, because it feels more natural. It feels like a natural conversation, whereas Duolingo, it feels more as if it was a pop quiz where you're being graded. Whereas with virtual reality, it feels as if you're having a conversation that can take any turn. You won't necessarily feel that, oh, I'm gonna fail this. I have to wait like a few more days to regain my parts or regain my points. It's more of you go at your own pace.
Gotcha, thank you for that. Do any of you felt the judgy green owl Duolingo, right? Sorry, just make sure it's not just me. All right, so I really want to press on the wart part, right? Like, were there any frustrations that you've had with the technology or any suggestions of doing things a little differently?
I would say there was a lot of frustrations, at least on my end, when doing the Frame VR. I think that the site crashed a lot, and I used like 4 different devices, but the virtual reality wasn't as helpful, and I ended up just using my computer, which still provided me with that virtual reality space, but it wasn't super immersed into it. But I would say on the other side, we were able to use AI to create objects that we couldn't necessarily put in, but at the same time, the AI would misspell a lot of stuff. Like my group had a banner that said guidance counselors, and every time we tried to generate one, it would say like a completely different word. So we ended up just going with very basic shapes. But I feel like besides that, it was very inclusive, as in I'm not really tech savvy despite being young. I can barely work my phone, but I was able to figure out a lot of things through the VR. The only thing I would say would be that the headsets weren't necessarily glasses friendly. So if I had my glasses on, I would sort of have to take them off, and then I wouldn't be able to see. So I would have to pre-plan to wear contacts, which I would say would be a downside for anyone with those struggles.
I can also relate to the glasses thing, and I cannot see anything without my glasses, so it's a bit uncomfortable. But other than that, I just had one suggestion. So 3D Organon is very anatomy heavy. I just wish it would show a bit more of the physiology. So like, for example, like in the heart, it would be nice to see all the way the blood flows through all the 4 chambers and then through the lungs. That would just like help better strengthen my understanding, but otherwise I really enjoy the computer.
I mean, apps are bound to crash, you know, not everything is perfect, but the VR reality can use a little less crashing, but other than that, it works perfectly, yeah.
I would say that one of my main issues were the glasses issue, because I wear glasses, I don't really have the option to wear contacts, and also sometimes I do wrap my hair in a head wrap, which like has a bun in the back, so that was an issue for me with putting the headset on. It would usually like smush my head a little bit and make it uncomfortable, or my glasses would smush in my face and like I wouldn't be able to see properly and it would make the VR experience blurry. I think another issue, I kept having to remind myself that this is a beta, we're still working things out and this is still very new, but I wish that we were able to move around more. I feel like the only time we were ever able to move about more was the Anne Frank session that we did, but usually when we travel to these other countries, we're usually like in a standstill point and we're only able to like turn around, but we're not able to really interact with the environment. And I feel like as a class that's based in history, we should be able to interact more with the environment that we're exploring. So I think that was one of the main issues that I had with the VR experience.
So since we didn't do VR, but we did something that assisted VR with the Insta360 cameras, the actual camera unit itself was really a marvel of technology when you had it in your hand. That being said, we have a classroom of 14 individuals and we have one camera, and we have one tripod, and therefore we have one battery, and we have one SD card. So what happens is when we all go to a site visit, there's a chance that, you know, we're doing our rounds, we're walking through the park, we're walking through the space trying to capture footage. All of a sudden, battery gets too hot, we have to stop. SD card is full, we have to stop. Something else happens, we can't fit it on the tripod. So there's a lot of times where we want to be interacting with this technology, but there's a lot of things that get in the way during that process, especially when you're away from a lab setting, we're outside. So if it's a hot day, the camera gets hot faster. If you didn't prepare right, if something wasn't fully charged, you're kind of dead in the water. So definitely a solution I could see is providing a larger scale class with more units to use, so that we're all conducting research at the same time, rather than a lot of the times that we saw was like one or two of us would be making our rounds while the other people are there kind of smelling the roses and waiting. So I think that's one thing that could be
literally smelling the roses. Yeah. Awesome, awesome. Well, are there any other parting thoughts about using immersive technology in the classroom you'd like to share with us?
I think what I really did appreciate about VR is the gap that it filled, the accessibility gap that it filled, because when we talk about traveling and undergraduate experience, it's usually about study abroad, and studying abroad is really expensive. So I guess like VR really did bridge that gap, the accessibility gap, and we were able to supplement that, not in a huge way. It didn't give you the exact experience, the full experience of studying abroad, but it did kind of give you that experience of what it meant to like really go to another place and understand it through your own eyes instead of just reading it out of a book or seeing it in a video from another perspective. So I think VR, as it continues to develop, it could even like get closer and closer to that study abroad experience without the price tag attached to it.
That's a really great point, and actually Dr. Affont is here. She runs a class, Education in the Global World, and this spring break, she was supposed to go with they were actually going to go abroad to Cuba. Unfortunately, because of given current circumstances, they can't, but I think the class in the next couple of weeks is actually going to come in to use Havana and JVR, so then they can actually get it that way since their trip got postponed. So kind of like on the one end and on the other end, so.
So parting thoughts I have with the VR is that I wish it was in my A&P class 1. As well as I feel like it got me into a head start to my junior clinicals as a nursing student, because the model is an exact replica of the human body. So I'm very grateful that I got to experience this, and yeah, I have a lot of hope for the future of science here at Rutgers, Science and Technology.
I too wish it was in Anatomy and Physiology 1, especially the skeletal and muscular system. It would have been very helpful. But I'm glad to use it for Anatomy and Physiology 2. It really strengthens our anatomy of the body, understanding of the anatomy, and as Dr. Vector truly says, if you know the anatomy, the physiology part becomes very, very easy to you because they go hand in hand. So yeah, that's a really positive thing.
I would also say that I'm super grateful to have used it. I'm pretty sure in Professor Tian's class tomorrow or next week we're also going to be using it again, so I'm super excited about that. And aside from just using it in college, I feel hopeful for what virtual reality will look like within schools, and including the accessibility that was mentioned for a lot of students, especially when it comes to emergent bilinguals and how we can provide more access for them to receive the education that they deserve. But it was just a great experience and I learned a lot.
Well, thank you all. Can we give a round of applause for our students here, giving us that real, which we really appreciate. Thank you all for your time. We still have a few minutes, so again, if you still want to explore, if you haven't explored the hands-on tables, there are people there to help assist you. Thank you all for coming today. We're not kicking you out again. We still have 20 minutes, but please go explore, and thank you again.